You have no idea how much I'm enjoying how the pretentious writing of The Boys has heavily backfired. Now the show is being heavily review bombed, and journalists are left puzzled, wondering why nobody wants to eat the $250 million slop.
Why don't they like it? We spent $250 million on this.
The sheer incompetence behind the production of this grand finale makes you wonder exactly how much cocaine and how many hookers were paid for out of a huge cut of the budget of this series. Because as we speak, people are using AI to create even far more impressive alternate finales that make you realize, holy shit, the writers of this show are all spending the money on their own personal enjoyment and laughing at you, all while getting a chance to finally masturbate to their over-glorified Trump derangement syndrome that plagued the writing of this series and created what is quite possibly the most in-your-face, finger-wagging piece of liberal shit I have seen in a while. And I normally don't like to talk like every other anti-woker because that shit gets repetitive. As someone who's in favor of mocking both sides, I can tell you this series definitely picks a side and nearly overcompensates, creating the fan fiction every single person who mocked Charlie Kirk's death would love to have happen to Trump. And in that case, I wouldn't even give two shits if it was actually good, which it's not. You have any idea how much I regret wasting hours of my life sitting through this series hoping for a grand payoff? Yes, we all wanted to see Homelander killed. The problem here is that the writers wrote themselves into a bit of a dilemma because they created a villain and a character that's simply too good. No, I don't mean good as in he's lovable. I mean good as in you love to hate him. You love to see him on screen because he carries every inch of the series. A narcissistic, milk-guzzling god complex wrapped in an American flag. He was supposed to be the symbol of Trump, if Trump could fly, and had zero impulse control. For seasons, we watched him spiral, build character, build power, and become a genuine threat to humanity. In the finale, they turned him into a sniveling coward who gets his head caved in by Butcher with a crowbar while begging for mercy. And this is where the community is split. One half says that's a befitting end. The other half says if Homelander was really that easy to take out the whole time, why did he last until season 5? And I'm inclined to agree with that crowd. The internet has been arguing about power scaling and whatnot. At one point, this series was about the characters and their struggles, and then quickly became new battlegrounds for power scaling fans who dropped Dragon Ball Z. Although I'm not exactly sure why power scaling snobs would even take an interest in a show that did an absolutely terrible job of displaying said power scales. It's hard to deny that since the very beginning of this series, the displays of strength and superpowers has always been highly inconsistent. But not exactly in the way that the writers just forgot. No, it's in the sense that the writers just have zero respect for the audience that's actually consuming this slop. I mean, I'll admit, the Goy feed was a little yummy at the beginning, but now it's about as bland as a chicken nugget in 2026. It's as if the writers know the human population is consistently getting stupider by the year, and so therefore they left so many plot holes, so much inconsistency in plain sight, because their expectations were by 2026, most people won't even be able to tell the budget of this series. But fans caught on quickly, even if there's an ongoing gag about how fans of the series don't even watch their own show. I think it's a lot more true to say that the writers don't even seem to watch their own show. Don't even get me started on the writing of Butcher flip-flopping on his genocidal virus plan more times than a politician during election season. Or how Soldier Boy, a highlight of season 3, played by the wonderful Jensen Ackles, gets wasted away in a throwaway scene. Because they're gonna want you to pay for a spin-off series to see his adventures and how big of a piece of shit he is. Look how bad right-wingers are. The entire buildup of Homelander's empire crumbles in one episode because reasons. Ryan's entire arc of nature versus nature is resolved with a hug and a power down. It's rushed, it's lazy, and feels like the writers had too many streaming mandated subplots, not enough focus. That alongside the marketing team lying through their teeth. The epic conclusion is that the power of friendship was enough to hold Homelander down, so that he could just allow himself to be hit by Kimiko's wave. Something that he was able to avoid when Soldier Boy was pinning him to the ground. For some odd reason, he couldn't escape Ryan and Butcher holding him. And this is what fans mean by the writing makes no goddamn sense. Had it been that easy from the beginning, this show would have ended at season 3. Instead, they kept it on life support, feeding you non-interesting storylines about how Starlight is a woman who goes through woman things and we must be sympathetic for her. I cannot stand Starlight. One of the worst written characters in the series, one of the most entitled characters, who goes through the least amount of trauma, but we're supposed to act like her final showdown with the Deep is the most satisfying thing ever, when arguably the Deep had a far more complex and interesting character development than she did, only for him to be thrown into the ocean where somehow his superpowers are negated by sea creatures. You know, the same guy we saw riding a fucking sperm whale, the same guy we see with super strength and durability, the king of the ocean, can't deal with a kraken. I understand that the writers thought to themselves, this is poetic justice. Get it? He's getting killed by his own powers, even though none of it makes sense in terms of consistency, because if these characters were really that fragile the whole time, what the fuck was anybody afraid of? Not even having Butcher's dog killed could get anyone to give two shits. At that point, we were done. I mean, I know I was no longer invested in Butcher's character. Hell, even after like season 3. At that point, I didn't find myself rooting for him anymore. I found myself hoping he never got his revenge because of how wish-washy the character was. So when Butcher finally gets to do what we've waited 5 seasons for, absolutely zero of it is satisfying. And, you know, somehow, that's been brought up multiple times, we got Homelander, who has the ability to see through objects and have superhuman hearing powers, cannot tell someone else is fighting in another room. We also get to see him take off and fly into space in less than 2 seconds and come back. But those feats of strength, that speed, all his enhancements, they just don't exist in the final anticlimactic showdown between Butch, Ryan, Kimiko, and Homelander. We're really supposed to believe that Butch's pathetic tentacle powers can hold back Homelander, who took off to space in less than 2 seconds. Somehow Ryan perfectly times being able to tackle Homelander down when he's trying to take off. And this is what I mean by the writers just don't give a shit. They know that the audience they are pandering to, which you can't argue is a bunch of left-wingers, are going to eat up every second of the Elon Musk reference, every second of Homelander getting on his knees, begging for mercy, saying he'll suck dick, he'll eat poop. You know, the same Homelander who we're supposed to believe doesn't know how to fight, even though, you know, a couple seasons ago, he was doing it pretty well against Butcher and Soldier Boy, who are both trained in hand-to-hand combat. They know the payoff is that every person who hates Trump and hates right-wingers and right-wing media is going to jerk themselves off at night for it. And look, if you want to appeal to liberals, fine. Most media does. But if you're gonna treat the people who consume this like they're fucking toddlers who aren't paying attention because you're dangling keys in front of their face, then don't be surprised when your fucking trashy finale gets review bombed. You think we're not gonna notice that, you know, a few seasons ago, Homelander splits Kimiko in half with his lasers, and then somehow he can't do that here? Are you supposed to really make us think that we can't remember the last time Homelander did a huge laser beam into the sky that was massive and looked like it could split continents? My God, everything is written as if they just wanted to get this shit over with because they had no passion or soul for the project anymore, because they signed a contract in agreement that there would be 5 shitty seasons. Oh, let's talk about how we watch Butcher literally get his ass knocked out, getting slammed on the ground by Bomb Sight. But when it comes to Homelander, the man isn't even knocked out. I don't want to sound like one of those Dragon Ball Z power scaling doofuses, but consistency in this kind of sense absolutely matters. Now, I'm not trying to steal one out of the Critical Drinker's book here, but this is a prime example of the message interfering with what is supposed to be consistent and solid writing. We see this happen a lot with modern day media because some writers are just simply more obsessed with the political arguments they participate with on social media, and they let that get in the way of creating good art. I would argue that the original ending of The Boys, while not my favorite, it's still a million times better than what we got here. At the very least, they were able to keep you on your toes with the twist at the end. Here, zero twists. The conclusions for all the characters are absolute trash. Don't get me started on Mother Milk's horrendous ending. This man not only didn't get to conclude his storyline with Soldier Boy, but then the guy goes back to the wife that left his ass for fucking Todd, who endangered his family by bringing their daughter to Homelander. He went back to her. I'm sorry, but any man willing to go back to a woman who dated a fucking doofus like Todd is a fucking retard.
Oh, you see, it's good writing. They're gonna love this. We gotta make sure that men understand there's nothing women can't be redeemed for. There are no consequences. Let's fuck up this entire generation of women.
I really do not know what enticed this man to return to the woman who was such a poor judge of character. It could have endangered their family, but that's the type of writing they want you to just eat. And then there's Huey and Starlight, who named their baby after the man Huey killed. Because I don't really understand the writers of this show. They all seem to be sociopaths. Like, characters can just die and be forgotten and everybody's smiling in the next scene. And other characters' actions don't have long-term consequences, giving the entire show basically no stakes whatsoever. You can tell this is writing produced by people who live their whole lives committing actions towards others and, waking up the very next day as if nothing happened, inconsequential. It creates some characters that just do not seem relatable or real at all. And the only time anybody wants to hold anybody accountable is when it's fucking Starlight and her entitled ass. The only character who seems to have gotten an honorable send-off and a proper conclusion with good character development, oddly enough, was A-Train. The only character who seemed to be able to actually redeem himself. Now that I think about it, he was probably the best character. If he didn't run into Huey's girlfriend, he wouldn't have gotten Starlight, which is a visual upgrade. It wouldn't have encouraged Huey to team up with the boys to take out Homelander and stop Vought. And he saves Huey's life in the end. After overcoming addiction, pressure, he instead chooses his own fate and his own ending. And it's probably the only time I'll actually give the writers any credit. Now, like I was talking about when it comes to stakes, it never really felt like any characters were in any real danger throughout the series. It wasn't until Frenchie's death that the writers hit you with that, nah, see, look, they're still human, they're still prone to so easily dying by such powerful beings. But then we get non-powered folks storming the White House in the final showdown as if they're not being reminded of how fragile and weak they are. We gotta talk about the promotional images that were used to highly advertise this crap. All those soups flying above the White House never happens. Homelander viewing the Earth being destroyed from orbital space doesn't happen. There is no scorched Earth. There is no display of a budget at all. And then I hear the excuses, well, they had to cram everything into the finale, where they had 7 episodes of doing absolutely nothing but wasting resources and time. Some of the worst choreographed combat scenes I've ever seen, and they're all laughing at you. The people writing this crap are all having a gag. They're partying on yachts, doing some of the best drugs you could ever think of, fucking some of the hottest women that you'll never get to lay your eyes on, because arguably, the people who like to consume this are never gonna get a glimpse of those types of lives. It's goy feed. It's meant to be served to the mass population who whose IQ is low enough to even want to consume this. At some point, they should just fucking call the show The Goys instead of The Boys. If it wasn't for Anthony Starr's incredible acting, I don't think I would have ever invested a single second into this. But that's the problem with everybody on social media. They're politically divided, arguing, oh, you just wanted to root for Anthony's character because he's like Trump. I'm fucking tired of political bias prioritizing itself in my fucking art. The fact that the writers had to dangle real life events and mix them into the writing of this fictional TV series to even catch anyone's attention lets you know how bottom of the barrel it is. The most memorable thing about season 5 is the finale, and it's not because it was good. It's up there with some of the worst finales of all time, like Game of Thrones. If we can return to a format where at most we get 1, 2 to 3 seasons of something, I would very much enjoy that, because once you get to season 4 or 5, writers get bored and their writing then starts to resemble political social media arguments and events, because when given the opportunity to, every single one of these liberal writers will take that opportunity to moral grandstand you and ruin everything that you liked simply because they have to if they want to get their message across. Good writing has to be sacrificed for their own principles. We get it. You hate Trump. Trump bad. Republicans bad. I don't care if that's your political position. Go post on it on social media, where you leave yourself open to getting ratioed by random nobodies. Because when your hate of a political party is greater than your love and passion for writing and directing, it's going to severely impact your work. What could have been, should have been, didn't happen, because we have yet another case of woke writers mysteriously having such little budget and such little resources spent, but their personal lives are so enriched. Odd how that works, isn't it? All in all, I cannot recommend a single person jump into this series. If you've never seen The Boys, don't start now. There is no point at starting in season 1. I wouldn't wish this final season on my worst enemies. But you tell me in the comments, please. I'll be reading as many as possible. Did you enjoy the series finale? I look forward to the chaos that's about to ensue. This is one of many future videos covering media of all types. I don't want to just sit in your subscription feed laying dormant with absolutely no content. So share, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll be catching you guys in the next one. Have a good day.